from the age of 15, for like 15 years, I just went from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next. And it felt a little bit like I traded physical pain for emotional pain.
Mm. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Stacey Urick, and I'm really excited to have you guys join us today. Today's guest is Nikki Retigan from England. So welcome, Nikki.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Guys, as you know, I'm a life coach. I utilize a methodology called rapid transformational therapy, also known as RTT. It comes out of England and was mentored by a beautiful psychotherapist named Marissa Peer. And I met Nikki through that experience. We're both alumni. We're both practitioners of RTT. And we had a number of different classes together and we just clicked. We have very similar bubbly, extroverted energy. And I got to know a little bit more about Nikki's story. So when I was putting my guest list together, I thought, I got to ask Nikki if she'd be interested because her story is really amazing. So I'm just going to give you a couple little bullet points and I'm going to let Nikki take it right from there. At 5 years old, Nikki was diagnosed with scoliosis. At 8 years old, she was hit by a car. At 7 years old, she had appendicitis. What happened with your arm at 11, Nikki? Did you break it?
Yeah, I fell down the stairs and I broke my arm and my wrist.
Okay. And then at 11, she had a spinal fusion. And at 12, she had spinal surgery. 34 years old, she had a stroke. And I'm going to let her take it from there because I think what's important for people to understand is sometimes when those things happen to one person, the automatic thought is, I just have a shitty life. Bad things happen to me. Good things are not available to me. So Nikki, given all of that, I want you to tell me, what did you think about your life? And share with us a little bit about what you were thinking as those things were going on.
So I think that because they started at such a young age, it's a bit like when I had this thought when I was younger. I had a realization that people did Christmas differently. Like in my house, we opened our stockings and then we came downstairs and then we had our presents and we would do them one at a time and we'd all be in there together and my dad would film it. And I just assumed that that's what everybody else's life was like. And then I went to my next door neighbour's house for a sleepover and she told me what her Christmas morning was like. And it blew my mind that I couldn't believe it was so different. And I think that that's kind of how I felt about my life experience, that I didn't really know that other people didn't have these constant traumatic events happening. I didn't really know, even though I had a brother and a sister.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I know that you're a set of three and you didn't necessarily see that happening with them. Right. So did you just think this is just my life and it's nothing else could possibly be available to me?
Yeah, I didn't really factor in. I got a lot of praise for my acceptance of what was. You know, like Nikki just takes it as it comes. Nikki just gets on with it. And so that was drummed in a little bit as well, where I'd just be like, well, this is the way it is. I can't change it. And it just carried on that way. It was never any different. Those were just a few of the list of things that would happen. It would be that I was clumsy or I was unfortunate. Oh, these things always happen to Nick. Of course it's Nick, you know. And it just became my identity. My whole identity was around these illnesses or these issues, about not always being the sick one.
Yeah. And we learn about that in our TT, don't we? That there are everybody takes different roles in a home.
Yeah.
The perfectionist, the rebel, the caretaker, the sick one. So I'm sure when that was introduced, that concept that really spoke to you.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just want you to share what happens after you have the spinal surgery. You end up, going to university, correct?
college.
College, right? Well, here it's kind of the same. And you end up getting into a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens in that relationship?
So I had relationships from the age of 15 consistently throughout my 20s. And then I met Paige's dad when I was 30. So from the age of 15, for like 15 years, I just went from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next. And it felt a little bit like I traded physical pain for emotional pain.
Mm.
Like,
So can
there
you
was no,
explain why you think that and what was happening?
well, I didn't know this.
Of course.
This is
This is
nothing.
why we do these podcasts, so people
Yeah,
can be like, oh shit, wait a
yeah.
minute, that's me.
Because I had no clue, no clue. So I had all these constant, painful, physical, painful events. And I'm talking pain. You know, like childbirth was a breeze for me. I had experienced so much intense, enduring pain.
Can you explain what that looked like or in what way you were enduring pain?
Well, to be hit by a car is not fun. And to break this arm bone isn't fun. But it was like, that was fairly quick. You know, like the recovery process wasn't too arduous. But my spinal surgeries with the scoliosis, so 90-degree curve would be like this. I had a 64-degree curve. So I was very much, because as you can probably see, I'm still curved now, despite having had surgery to correct it. And that's good. They can only pull you up so much without snapping your spinal cord, which wouldn't be my preference. But having that surgery, it's like a 5-hour surgery. And it's like a plant that wilts, and you put the stake in and bind it to the metal that they put into your back. It was unbearably painful for months, you know, and it was one thing after another because, of course, I'm the sick one. So in my family, I get significance. I become someone. I become important. I matter more when I'm sick in my head. And so,
did you recognize that then?
No,
Of course
I've
not.
only just recognized it, Stacey. I've only just realized.
This is why we do the podcast, because I want people to be like, oh my goodness, wait a minute.
Yeah. Like it was just constant. And underneath everything, we know that even if it looks really bad and it's something that somebody doesn't want, there's always a secondary gain. There's something that you're getting out of it. And
Right.
I was getting a lot out of being sick because I had my mum putting flannels on my forehead, you know, my dad concerned about me, people giving me sympathy, kindness, got loads of cards, loads of presents, and lots of focus. And I was the one in my family. My sister was very sporty. My brother was very sporty. And it was like we were a sporty family, but I wasn't. I was creative. I was theatrical. I was too much. Like I was very extra. And I wasn't significant in that way. I wasn't scoring goals. I wasn't
Well, I
getting
was just going to say,
medals.
were you getting praise for being extra? Or were
No,
you
I
getting
was
positive
getting
attention for being extra?
No, you can imagine, like I was
Yeah.
a pain in the ass because I was like constantly so excited, so full on, chat all day long, drama, you know, loud. And it was like, can you not? Like, can we just? And so it wasn't praise. I can imagine I must have done people's heads in, but still, I'm trying to find my place. You know, like how can I get what I need, which is kindness, one-on-one time, and focus. You know, I want attention.
And also, wouldn't you say it's fair, just attention for being you?
Yeah.
For
But I
not
didn't.
performing, just being.
Yeah.
Even though in this case, you're being quote unquote sick.
Yeah.
Right. So when you talk about you change, you exchange physical pain for emotional pain.
Mm.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I know that a lot of people would have heard of the law of attraction and like how energy matches and you attract what you are familiar with, you attract what you expect, and you want to always look to feel how you felt before because it feels comfortable for you,
But we
which
go
is
to
why,
what's familiar, right?
yeah,
Even if it's dysfunctional, it's
yeah.
predictable.
Exactly. So
Okay.
if somebody has been raised by a really loving dad who's told her that she's a princess, that she deserves to be treated well, she would never get into a relationship where that person criticized and was rude and horrible and didn't do anything. She'd be like, this is not what love is. This is not love. I don't like this. I'm not standing for that. It's exactly the same when you have a pattern about how you receive love. So mine was through pain, through sympathy. And so I got into relationships where they weren't good. I was never treated as somebody special, as significant. Like one of my ex-boyfriends used to make me sleep on the floor in his bedroom because he needed more space in his double bed.
Mm.
And I would.
Yeah. So I want to stop it right there because you and I have all this backstory in our heads. We understand what was happening in that moment. But for
Yeah.
people that don't study this, I
Mhm.
want to try to tweeze out for them so they
Mm.
understand what we're talking about here. You have this sense of I'm not enough without being in pain. And
Mhm.
pain is my knowing. Pain is the way I receive love.
Yeah.
Right. So, what people need to understand is that is not a cognitive decision, that is a feeling.
Mm.
So, when we talk about why we go into the subconscious, we go into the subconscious when we're working with people by way of RTT and hypnosis because that's where the truth is. And the truth is in the feeling. And the
Yeah.
feelings that we have growing up help us develop our core beliefs, which tend to be rooted by the time we're 8.
Mhm.
So, whatever feeling you had in your body, however it was embodied, there was a sense of feeling of what felt comfortable. And
Mhm.
what felt comfortable is what is familiar. So I
Yeah.
need that to be really clear. Comfortable doesn't mean good.
Mhm.
Comfortable doesn't mean positive. It means familiar.
Yeah.
So if always feeling different, rejected, abandoned, not enough, is what you are used to. If you're find yourself in a relationship where you're not feeling that way, it's going to feel very uncomfortable.
Mm.
So even if it's not productive, you're going to yield being in a relationship, excuse me, with something that makes you that familiar feeling come out,
Yeah.
right? Would
Yeah.
you agree with that?
100%.
Okay. So here you are, you're in a relationship. The guy's super selfish.
Mhm.
He's like, I need more space. You can sleep on the floor. And you're
Mhm.
like, yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really worthy of being in the bed anyway. Because I'm really
Yeah.
nothing unless I'm sick. And I'm not sick right now anyway. So I
Mhm.
must be nothing. Is that fair
Mhm.
to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And also, it was always for me, it was how much do I need to suffer for that person to turn around and put the flannel on my forehead?
Okay, we just need to sit with that for 1 second because that is so powerful and that is the truth.
Yeah, it is.
That's the shit that gets pulled out in an RTT session. And when
Yeah.
it does,
This is where it got pulled out.
I'm sure it did. But what I love about this, and you'll have to tell me if this is accurate, once you gained that understanding, you could never unsee it.
No, couldn't. It took my breath away.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It really took my breath away. And I laugh because I'm in a position where I do know this now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what a way to live for 31 years, 34 years, if anything, what a way to live.
Yeah.
And knowing that there are other people out there that are doing the same thing, but in a variation of.
Of course. And this is what I'm always telling people. So whatever it is that happened in our childhood, and it doesn't have to be a thunderstorm, it doesn't have to be a tornado, it doesn't have to be this massive thing that you were aware of. It's a raindrop or it's a mist, and it might be constant, but you're not really picking up the cues, right? But it's happening before we're 8. And then the lens through which you see everything in the world and the lens through which you see yourself now has this particular filter on it.
Yeah.
And you don't even know that there's a filter. So once you're in that hypnotherapy session through RTT and you can actually see it unfiltered, you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you get to change that filter. You get to take it off, really, and see things from a more pure standpoint, correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I'm so impressed by what you learned there. So keep going. So you realize, well, I want to pull back. So you find yourself in all of these relationships.
Oh, mate, they went from bad to worse. You know, it
keep
was almost, and see, this is the thing, right? With any kind of belief, issue, trauma, if it's not addressed, if it's not found, located, if it's not, tackled, it just grows. Because I was getting, it's like, the person who just does a bit of coke and then they're like, okay, this is fun. And then it's like, I need a bit more to get the hit. I need a bit more. Oh, whoop, mind me, Mike. And then constantly it's more and more and more because your tolerance goes up. And everything's just growing and growing and growing because it's this infection that's getting worse and worse, And so I needed to suffer more and more and more in order to get the same hit.
That's amazing.
Of that feeling that I used to get when they would turn around. It was very rare, and it got rarer with the more and more far along I got, that they would turn around and kind of give me kindness.
And how did that feel?
It felt like I'd achieved something. Like I did it.
Were you comfortable with the kindness?
I was comfortable only because I'd done everything in my power to earn it. Like I'd been in that amount of pain. I would not have been comfortable with any kindness. And I can share the fact that I had a boyfriend when I was 26. And he was lovely. And this is completely like I forced myself to get into that relationship consciously. That wasn't an attraction. That was this is a good decision. I can't keep going on like this. It's how much I wanted to deviate from my pattern. I didn't want it. I hated getting hurt.
And so how did that relationship go with the 26-year-old really nice guy?
Yeah. So we were together for a few years and we lived together. We got a dog together and I loved him and he loved me. But there was always under the surface this feeling that it was never going to be enough. Like it was never going to be enough for me. And I think like my nervous system was so used to the highs and lows, I couldn't play that game with him. Yeah. It didn't matter to him whether I was sick or whether I wasn't sick. He just loved me unconditionally. And it was a very unfamiliar. I remember it was almost like I was going over the top of a roller coaster getting into that relationship. Like I just went, right, I'm going for it. And I didn't, it made me feel sick to get into it. It was a traumatic experience to get into this nice relationship, to force myself to do it. And it all,
I mean, you have to hear what you just said. It was a traumatic experience in order for me to get myself into this relationship. But I want people to understand what that means, because I understand what that means. The trauma is the feeling.
Yeah.
The trauma is the interpretation. It's not the event.
No.
So to force yourself to get comfortable with the uncomfortable can feel very scary.
Yeah.
And it can bring up the sensations that happen when we experience trauma. For example, anxiety.
Oh
panic,
my God.
Right? All of these different things, because it's unfamiliar. This part of your brain, the amygdala, is going hot, hot, hot. It's an alarm. You're not safe. It causes all of the sensation that we label as panic, heavy chest, fast breathing, stomach issues. Like it just doesn't feel comfortable. It's not clicking.
I literally had a panic attack. Like I left his house at 3:00 in the morning because I was like, I can't stay here. And he did nothing. He's just a lovely, kind-hearted guy. But I managed to stay because I think even then, like my soul was crying out for real love. You know, it must do. Everyone's soul knows what real love feels like, even if you've never felt it before.
And would you say that wasn't because you weren't allowing it fully in?
Yeah, I think that there was part of me that really needed his kind of love. It soothed my soul. It really did. And even now, that relationship is one that I can look back on and be like, that was a love I hadn't felt from someone before. But the truth is, I never allowed myself to love him the way he deserved to be loved. Because I didn't feel worthy of the relationship. And I didn't feel comfortable with how settled and safe it was. It sent me over the edge. Like,
you know, it's interesting. I have a client right now who, you know, I have a lot of clients that actually fit this mold where they grew up in chaos and they're in these lovely, strong marriages where the person is so super loyal. There's really no chaos in the home. You know, they found their person and they're just ready to bolt. They're so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They're always looking for the escape hatch. Always.
Yeah.
Right? Because this can't be me because I don't do this. I'm not worthy of this. This is not what should be available to me.
Yeah.
And so even though it is, they're still trying to convince themselves, not for me. That's for someone else. I'm not really that worthy of it. True love is chaos. True love is watching my parents beat the shit out of each other. True love is having the cops come to my house because my mom's being beat. You're not beating me. So therefore this shouldn't be real love.
Yeah. So for me, mine was always I can't reach the peak of my joy because I don't hit the lows of my suffering.
Well, it's like you're not having to work for it.
Yeah.
Right? It's too easy. It should be harder. All right.
Everything's
so
got to be a
fast
struggle.
forward. We get out of the easy relationship, the one that's making us want to vomit and run with like the best Nikes on possible. And where do you run to?
Straight into the arms of a lunatic.
And how did that go?
Wonderful. Oh.
Did you feel so comfortable and at home?
I felt like my Prince Charming had come. Like,
oh, wow.
It was like I was a junkie that had been in rehab for a few years and had burst out of it and was like, I need a shitload. I need the mother load. I need a fix.
Give me the mother load of toxic relationship.
Give me all the pain, all the suffering, all the highs and lows, spike me up, bring me down. You know, I need it. And the reason I needed it, I found it, of course. And it wasn't even hard.
Right.
Within 4 months, my first date after my previous relationship was with this guy, and it was a setup. Somebody set us up and said, oh, I think you'd be really good together. I didn't even have to look. He was delivered to me on a silver platter. Such is the law of attraction. Like, it's like energy and energy. You've got these negative things just coming at each other.
And I want people to understand law of attraction works this way. It doesn't work always in abundance. It works with whatever you're putting out.
Yeah.
Whatever you put out is what you receive.
Yeah.
So as the put out is nothing good is available to me. I'm not worthy of good relationships. I deserve shit relationships, that's
Mhm.
what you're going to get. When people talk about The Secret and the law of attraction, it goes both ways. It
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily, that's why I always tell people, be careful with what you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be careful with what you say because the universe is listening.
And that that overarching belief that I'd had since childhood, which was I'm only ever significant, I only ever matter to somebody, I'm only ever loved and given affection when I'm suffering.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I'm
So
writing that down.
I'll give you a sec.
No, you can keep going.
So I mean, with the father of my daughter, like I was pregnant within 3 months. It wasn't a planned pregnancy, it was a surprise. But we were both really happy about it because I think we just clung on to each other like toxic people do, it's like we're two halves and we made a whole.
Well,
And
this is what codependency is, correct?
yeah. And I had
Yeah.
no idea. I'd never heard of codependency
Mm.
or narcissism or anything like that. I wasn't aware of those phrases, those words. And it was just an absolute shit show, like the amount of red flags I had to ignore.
Mm.
I didn't have to ignore them, actually. Scratch that. I chose to ignore,
Mm-hmm.
because I was enjoying it.
Tell me what you were enjoying.
I was enjoying how familiar it felt, how comfortable and right it felt.
And what is it? Was it the push and pull?
It was I could God, I'm not used to using these things. It was like he was never fully available to me, and that had been my pattern with the previous relationships, bar the nice one. They were never fully emotionally available to me. They were never quite looking at me. They never were just there for me. So it's like I chased them around, doing everything that I could to get them to see me and to give me attention and to give me love. And he was by far the most in and out of it. One minute he'd be confessing his undying love for me, and the next minute I wouldn't hear from him. He'd be out all night, then he'd come back and reassure me, then he'd take it away, give it to me, take it away. But from very early on in the relationship, I've got a stake in this,
because
I'm
you're
carrying
pregnant.
his baby.
Yeah. Right.
And that changed everything because all of the alarm bells that were going off, I felt I had no choice but to ignore them because I was in this now and there's no way out. And it's really interesting how much you can bury your head in the sand, because I literally had 2 night terrors early on in my pregnancy. One where I was literally hanging out of my mum and dad's bedroom window when I woke up, and that was me trying to escape, trying to bolt. And then the second one, I was at his and we were in the bed asleep, and then I woke up and I was up in his window screaming at him to get away from me. I don't know who you are, go away from me. And he was going, it's me. And I could see him, but I thought he was a stranger. I mean, that was my mind going, you don't know this man. And you need to wake up and recognize what you're in here because you're not safe. Yeah. But I didn't, not through that. The whole pregnancy, we played happy families and there were these little bells going off every now and again, but nothing huge, but enough to kind of question the whole relationship.
Yeah, but at that point you're like, I'm all in. I'm pregnant. There's no walking. Yeah. Isn't it interesting how the universe works? It's like, Nikki, I'm going to give you the biggest hurdle of your life.
Yeah.
And let's see what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
So what did you do with it?
I tripped over it.
How many times?
Fell on my face. But yeah, after I had Paige, it went from bad to way, way worse. And I think that was due to a couple of different reasons. One of them was that I hadn't recognized that he had this narcissistic behavior.
Mm-hmm. And how would you qualify that, just for people that are listening?
So he is very much somebody that if you're with him, you're with him. And if you're against him, you are against him. You know, there is no in between. You're either part of him or you are nothing.
The devil. Him.
Yeah, literally the devil.
Like
he would shit on you, like if he could. And I feel that when we got together and me falling pregnant so quickly and me not having a strong sense of self at all, I became an accessory of his. Like I was like a handbag, you know?
Okay. I got to stop you right there, because for people that don't understand narcissism, that's going to sound very strange. But for somebody that's listening that's been in a narcissistic relationship, they're going to have a tear with that because they're going to understand exactly what that means. When I try to explain narcissism to some of my clients, and this is what hits home, they're like, I don't understand how they can XXX. And my response always is, because a relationship with somebody that's narcissistic is transactional.
Yeah.
There's a means to an end.
Yeah.
You are a part of a game.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, the person has no idea they're in a game, and that's why they are losing constantly. So for you to say, I was an accessory, spot on.
Yeah.
That's what people that don't understand narcissism don't understand. There is a missing chip. There is no possible way for the person who is dealing with this narcissistic personality type or tendency. They don't know how to have an emotional connection to anything or anyone.
No.
Every single connection is a means to an end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And the better you're going to make me look, the longer I'll keep you around. But the moment you don't make me look the way I need to look, outward facing to everybody else, you're out. I don't have any use for you anymore. Is that fair to say?
Oh dear. So exactly. And the thing is,
and that's painful for somebody that's been in a marriage, by the way, for 20, 30, 40 years.
It's awful
for them to have to realize they always were a means to an end.
It's awful. Like,
and it's not that person's fault.
No.
They trusted.
Yeah.
They trusted. So there's a lot of healing when I work with my clients coming out of narcissistic abuse, because it's really a psychological abuse, but every single person leaves feeling the same way. An absolute shell of themselves.
Yeah.
Full of self-doubt. Full of blame, full of questioning. What if I could have just? And I have to get them to understand there's nothing you could have done. You were in a game and you didn't even know it. It's like the worst version of Hunger Games ever.
Yeah. I used to say I felt like I'd gone to war with a spoon. Plastic shitty spoon from like Costa Coffee. That's how I felt. I was so ill-equipped for what was about to happen.
I think that's the word. That's the word. And the problem is who goes into a relationship thinking you need to be equipped?
Yeah.
That just doesn't jive. So to realize you're coming out of it, that you're ill-equipped is also a little bit, I'm sorry for people that are watching on your podcast, but people know I'm a cursor. Like, that's a mind fuck.
Oh, no one cares. I swear all the time.
That's why we connect. So, okay. So you're pregnant. You're this beautiful accessory. I mean, for people that listen to this on the podcast and they don't see the screen, like, you are beautiful. So you are this beautiful accessory on this guy's arm, probably beautifully pregnant. You're this petite little thing. And you have the baby, you have Paige, and what happens?
You hit the nail on the head when you said that it's transactional and when they have no use for you anymore. that made me go a bit cold. And it's interesting how even now, how you can tell like I'm over it, like as much as you can possibly be, but it's still, you can still feel it. I can still feel that feeling of the discard. Like I was discarded.
Yeah.
When the minute the baby was out, that was the transaction. That's what I was used for. On our first date, he told me he wanted to have 4 kids and he was 35 and he was talking about kids. And then within 3 months, I'm carrying the baby and he looked after me really well during my pregnancy.
But here's a big piece of information for people that are not in the know. There's a big difference between wanting kids and wanting to be a dad.
Yeah.
Because the kids, ...
Mm-hmm.
are the accessory now.
Yes.
And it's transactional.
Yeah.
And so when I have a client saying to me, I don't know how my ex was able to write this contract to cut my child out of ABCXYZ, which I've heard many times, like, because there's no use.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's transactional.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it's really, I think, I just want to sidebar this really quick before we keep going, because I'd like to use this platform for education for people that don't understand narcissism. And I am not here to say this person had NPD or narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not a therapist. I've never met the guy. I can't diagnose him. But, when somebody has tendencies, they have tendencies, right? Mm-hmm. So clearly this person has a lot of tendencies that fall into a narcissistic category. What people need to understand about people who walk with narcissistic tendencies is that they are the most wounded child.
Mm.
And you can only develop that personality type as a coping mechanism to having been insecurely attached as a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I really want that to be very clear. Nobody comes out of the womb a narcissist.
No.
Never. What ends up happening is you're not securely attached as a young child, meaning your emotional needs were not fully met by a parent or parents. And so in order to get your needs met, Nikki, your physical pain in order to get your needs met. Okay. Somebody that's narcissistic, they have to learn manipulation in order to get their needs met.
Yeah.
At a very young age, they learn that the only way to get, and I'm going to put this in quotes, unconditional love is to manipulate it, which we both know is not unconditional. It's totally conditional.
Yeah.
But that's what they learn. They are not consciously doing it. They learn this playbook so young, that becomes the filter through which they see everything. The problem is they'll likely never get help for it because one of the parts of that playbook is I'm never wrong.
Yeah.
It will always be somebody else's fault. I'm always the victim. Right? Because they were a victim as a young baby. Their needs weren't met.
Yeah.
So, not to give excuse for somebody, but it's important for people to understand where this comes from.
Oh, it's definitely worth explaining because there's got to be some kind of traumatic, reason
it's all a trauma
for
response.
The behavior, and everyone expresses it differently. Everyone has a different identity, like when you were saying about him needing to be the victim, like the narcissist always needing to be the victim of. I was on the other end going, I need to be the victim because I need to be sorry and be in pain, So it was like we were always dancing around each other. Like I really like the fact that now I'm able to see the part I played in this. That really has strengthened me as a person. It's moved me, it's helped me to move out of that victim role. Because when you're a victim of a narcissist and you end up emotionally fucked, psychologically damaged, questioning everything about yourself. And like, you were a handbag before, but now you are tattered, like no one wants you, and you're completely empty. So to pick yourself back up, you're still always going to be in the victim role of, I'm only just a shitty handbag, no one's going to want me. Like, you've got to then find your way to step back into the fact that, no, I'm not. I was never an accessory. He just made me feel that when I let him. That's the thing. No one can make someone feel like a handbag unless they're okay with it, unless they're all right with that.
And would you say it's fair enough to say that people who partake in that entered the relationship from a deficit to begin with when it comes to self-esteem and self-confidence?
I mean, my view is that that's true.
That is my view. And that's why when I'm working with women who are either currently recognizing that they're currently in a relationship with somebody that has this personality type, or they're in the process of divorce, or they're divorced but now have to parallel parent. I'm never even going to call it co-parenting because you really can't co-parent. Okay. So you're parallel parenting with that person, trying to navigate it in some way, shape, or form. What I try to do is help them go way back to the beginning and try to heal what it was way before they ever got into that relationship.
Yeah.
So they can go back to getting whole.
Yeah.
Right. Going back what we learned, this terminology, installing the cheerleader. Right? There was a time when you believed in yourself.
Yeah.
Even if it was when you were 4. But there was a time prior to accepting everybody else's opinions about your self-worth.
Yeah.
There was a time. And so what I try to do is I bring them as far back as I possibly can so they can go back and find that true, authentic self. So they can break the pattern.
Yeah.
Codependency, because they know that relying on themselves is a good thing. It's a whole cycle that people have to go through.
Yeah. This is the thing, right? So I feel like I split up with Paige's dad.
And how old was Paige?
9 months.
Yeah. So you made a quick split, technically.
Yes. And I'm grateful for that. I did go back for a couple of months when she was 18 months old, because he told me change. Also, I just broke down. I had had enough of the constant love bombing and then gaslighting cycle that was going on.
Love bombing and then let me withdraw and withhold emotion and love, right? That's part of the playbook for people don't know. I'm going to love bomb you, meaning I'm going to do all the things I can to reel you back in. So you can be like, oh my God, see, there he is. I knew that there was somebody I fell in love with.
He's changed.
And then the moment they have you, then what they do is they actually withhold emotion, which makes you more needy for them. It's chasing the dragon, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
And that only lasted literally 6 weeks. And then I recognized that the behavior was not changing. It was exactly the same as before. And then that was when I cut ties completely with regards to our relationship. But after that, I felt like even though I'd split up with him, I still didn't feel whole. I felt like if I got into another relationship, it would be yet another codependent relationship. I was still just this shitty old handbag because I hadn't got to the root, like you were saying earlier, of why I ever ended up in that relationship in the first place. And that comes from being able to admit that there was something fundamentally not okay with me. And that's hard because as the victim, I always wanted to go, it was him. It was nothing to do with me. It was him. And that's only true to an extent. You know, you've got to look at what you can control. You can't change him and you can't change the relationship. If it's done, it's done. But to move forward, I had to go back and actually start to really question, like, what was it that I was getting out of?
That's the key.
The relationship. You know, why would I have chosen that? It took me so long to understand, so much effort and graft to understand what was going on in my mind. Bearing in
What
mind, I
did
didn't
you
even know what
understand?
codependence
What
was.
did you come back with? Because I think that that's really important for people to hear.
So after we split, because I feel like I want to talk about what actually happened that made me make that decision. Because I don't know, maybe it will inspire somebody. You know, I would like to think that somebody out there is in a similar situation and thinking, actually, no, I'm going to leave. You know, you can do it. But as soon as I had the baby, it was like I was a second-class citizen in our home, and I had been looked after and cared for whilst I was carrying the thing that he wanted, the thing that was going to make him feel good and look good to the world and everything else that comes with it. So it became really hard, really, really quick to be in a relationship with him. He wasn't love bombing me anymore.
Because he got what he wanted.
He got what he wanted.
He got the new shiny handbag in the form of a beautiful bouncing baby.
Yeah. And I was a member of staff. Like I was like the nanny. And so the judgment and the criticism that came with my parenting skills, you know, like I wasn't feeding her right. I wasn't dressing her right. I wasn't bathing her right. I wasn't rocking her right. Like, I couldn't do anything right. I was putting her in jeopardy. I was upsetting her if she cried. I wasn't never doing enough. And in the meantime, he was also texting other women, you know, and that was something I hadn't experienced with him before. And it was crushing to me that was, because I'd never had that before. I'd never had, to my knowledge, somebody doing that, going behind my back or being unfaithful in any way. So it was a real shock to the system that my perfect family unit was all a lie, and I had to address it. I couldn't hide from it. You know, it was there in black and white. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I can't believe I've got myself and my daughter into this situation.
And so how did you address it?
Well, not very well. Because the first time it happened, the baby was 10 weeks old. And he came in from a night out because he'd go on benders. You know, the week after she was born, he went out on an all-night bender and left me there. And my sister came to help me look after her because I was still a new mum, first-time mum. You know, I was still a bit anxious. And because I doubted myself so much. And so he'd gone out and got home at about 4 a.m. And I went downstairs to make the baby's bottle, and his phone was on the side, and it had like messages from this girl on the home screen. So I went in and sat with the baby and pretended to be him texting her in WhatsApping her. And it was just a decision that I made. It was probably a bad decision, but it's what I did. I was sleep deprived, very hormonal, and it felt like I was in another reality. Like my whole everything was in my feet. I felt like lead feet, and it was rising like I was in quicksand. And I found out that they arranged to go out for a drink, and I'm like, what does this mean? I don't even know who this person is. Like, and I'm pretending to be him, and she's flirting. And then I sent a photo of me and Paige, and I was like, by the way, you've been speaking to me. And she was quite shocked. I think she'd blocked me at that point. And I went in to speak to him, and he was not in his right mind because he'd been out all night. And he immediately turned it round and started to say that it was me.
Of course.
That he'd seen messages between me and a boy on Facebook, and it was me. I'd made it happen. And I said, okay, what guy? And then he gave me the name, and I said, that guy is gay. and he's a friend of mine, and he's wearing a wedding dress in his profile picture. Like, he's not only gay, he's like super gay. You can see it in his pictures.
Like, we do not belong to the same church, so you have nothing to worry about here.
Yeah, but there was no accountability. There was no acceptance of my feelings or anything like that. And I wanted to leave.
Wait a minute. Let's just back it up, because I want people to hear this, especially because you said it, and I agree. If someone's starting to identify with your story, I want them to hear this piece. At no time did he break down, have shame for being caught, no shame, okay, and try to apologize or come up with a reasonable reason. The response was, you're crazy. You caused this, not me. I think it's really important for people who do not understand narcissism to understand this. The narcissist has no empathy.
Yeah.
And the thing is that they walk around a very shameful existence because they really don't believe that they're worth a lot because of this insecure attachment we talked about earlier. But the reality is that when they are caught, it's much more, shit, how do I get out of this? They don't have the capability to feel bad that they did something wrong.
Yeah.
Because 100%. They lack empathy. That's a big part of a checklist. Okay. So when you actually look at a checklist of, say, sociopathic tendencies and narcissistic tendencies, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Because that lack of empathy and sense of responsibility can become very dangerous very quick.
Well, so it did for me.
You're 10 weeks postpartum.
Yeah.
Your hormones are outrageous. You're exhausted.
Yeah.
And you're being told by the person who's just been caught, at very least emotionally cheating on his girlfriend and newborn baby, that you, Nikki, are the cause of the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at that point, I was ready to leave the house. I needed to get out of there because I had felt like I'd lost everything. Because in my mind, being the empty handbag, I was like, he's going to leave me because he doesn't want to be with me. Why would he want to be with me? He's going to go. And I didn't know what it meant. But as I tried to leave, he grabbed my arm and pulled me back. And it was then that I had an experience I've never had before or since, where I absolutely went at him and I hit him. I was scratching him, trying to attack him, and I was screaming, how could you do this to me? How could you do this to me? And I was absolutely in such a state, so much adrenaline running through my body. I put the baby down on the bed and I was just going insane. It was like I was on fire. And he was trying to hold my arms down, and he let go of me, and all of the blood just drained out of me. And I stood there, and then I looked at him, and he got me by the throat, and he said, if you ever do anything like that to me again, I'll fucking kill you. And then he called the police.
On you.
On me.
That's the point that I wanted you to get to. And the thing is, for people that don't know, Nikki and I had a pre-podcast interview, but we did not talk about this. But I knew what she was about to say.
Yeah,
because
I didn't think
that's the fucking playbook.
Yeah.
But that's the playbook. Yeah. I'm going to chip away at you so lightly, you don't even know what's happening. Chip, chip, chip all day, every day. I'm chipping at you. I'm chipping at you. I'm chipping at you until you fucking explode. And now all of a sudden you are the abuser.
Yeah.
And you are the insane one. You are the crazy one. Do you know how many clients I have had where the ex or the soon to be ex partner is like, sure, I'll go to therapy. This has happened 3 times. I've heard this, where the partner, in this case, it was a male and female. So the male, who's the narcissist, goes to the psychologist to appease or the therapist comes back and says, my therapist thinks you have bipolar.
I had the same
3
thing.
times. Oh my God. 3 fucking times. 3 times.
The same.
Okay. Because this is what you need to understand if you're listening to this podcast, and this is going to go well past an hour because this is so important and educational today. And my gal Kelsey is going to break it up into a lot of pieces for people to consume on an easier basis. But here's the thing. When you explode, it's not because of what's happening in that moment.
No.
It's because of the months, the weeks, the days, in many cases, years, decades of the chipping away. So your window of tolerance shrinks. Now, all of a sudden, you lose your shit and you are now declared the difficult one, the insane one, the crazy one. And this gets better, guys. You're now apologizing for your behavior.
Yeah.
So what does that do? That validates the narcissist. See, I was right. She is the fucking crazy one. She even apologized for it. I want to just make mention, today is June 3rd, 2022. This week was the week of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp verdict on their trial. Now, for somebody that has studied narcissistic abuse for many years, and for somebody that studies trauma, childhood trauma, I could see very clearly what was happening. And I knew, and that verdict, in my personal opinion, was very spot on. Because Johnny was being chipped away. I'm not saying their marriage was perfect, and I'm not saying it wasn't toxic, and I'm not saying it wasn't crazy. But when the receiver of the abuse finally snaps, it will be used against them as a weapon for the rest of that relationship.
Yeah.
Period. It's really important for people to understand that.
Yeah, because it wasn't just that it was those texts. It had been a strip club a few weeks before. It had been, leaving me at the hospital with the baby for 4 hours because he went to a party. It was the bender that he went out on a week later, and it's all this stuff. And then it's always the criticism. You're not feeding her properly. You're not doing this properly, blah, blah, blah. You need to wear this. You need to, I only really like petite girls. And I was, obviously carrying a 10 pound of extra weight from the baby. So, put that food down kind of thing. And so all of that had accumulated to this point where I'm a lover, not fighter. I've never been a fighter. I've never even had a fight. But something in me, I went like a wild animal.
So he calls the cops on you, and what happens?
So they turn up and they have to arrest me because it's a domestic abuse situation. And the funny thing is that we're having bifolding doors fitted at the time. So these men are doing their work while the police are in there and they're shouting and screaming going on, and they're just merrily getting on with their work, doing the doors. Oh, it was just awful. And
let me just stand back. This is 10 weeks and you left when she was 9 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the police were very sweet. When they came in, I think they could soon work out that he had been coked up and drunk out of his head. And I was there, this new mum with this tiny baby. And the policeman said to him, you need to sort of back off. He never said for 1 minute, I don't want you to take her, until I said, I work for a bank. And if this goes on my record, I won't be able to go back to work because I was a contractor. They wouldn't rehire me because they'd have to vet me again. And that was when he flipped, because I was the breadwinner in our relationship. And he went, you can't take her. This is my livelihood. And that's when he got very upset. And then they said, you need to get out of here. And they spoke to me and said, what happened? I said, I just saw red and I'm sorry. and they said, we have to take you to the police station. And I couldn't even cry. I was in shock. I made up some bottles. I said, is it okay if I make some bottles for her for the day? Like, I don't know how long I'm going to be there. I was in a cell for 9 hours. I had a wee on camera. I literally sat on this bed thing, just this bed rocking. And at one point I was pulling my own hair out. I was just tearing my own hair out. Like I lost the plot in there. I was scratching and banging on the door. They normally only give you one phone call and they gave me 2 because I was hysterical for like the whole 9 hours because I couldn't bear. Not only did I not know what was happening in my relationship, I didn't know. I was away from my baby and I felt like I'd let her down. Like I'm not with you. The guilt I felt, it was just unbearable. I had to go to another dimension.
Yeah. Complete disassociation.
Yeah. It was just awful. One of the most awful experiences of my entire life. But the good thing was because the police felt for me, they said, can we give you some advice? This was in the car. And he said, can I give you some advice? And I'm just like, because I'd just taken a phone call from him saying, what bottle do I give her? And I said, give her one of the ones I've just made up. And he said, I gave her the one off of the playroom floor. And I went, that's old. It's not good for her. You know, he was drunk and in charge of this baby. Like, what is going on? His sister came to help with her. That made me feel better. But he said, take the legal representation, take the legal advice. So that's why I waited such a long time in the cell. And by the end, I was like, let me out. I don't want legal advice. I just need to get out of here. But they said, she's on her way now. So you may as well wait. And I'm so glad I did, because me being honest and open, it could have really been to my detriment because I would have answered the questions. But what she told me to say was no comment. And he dropped the charges. But it was the most harrowing experience. And when I got home, I was sorry. I'm so sorry.
This is what I was trying to say before.
Yeah.
This is the cycle of abuse. Push, pull, push, pull. You get chipped away, you get chipped away, you get chipped away. You lose your shit. You become someone you don't even recognize. Now you have shame.
Yeah.
Because you have all this bad feeling about yourself because you couldn't control your shit.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? You're apologizing.
Yeah.
It is the cycle. I see it all the time. And now that person has the upper hand. Say you're apologizing to me because you knew you were wrong. Therefore, I was right.
And he forbid me from talking about it again. Like we weren't allowed to talk about it again. And so I tried not to, but I was just falling apart at the seams. My friends didn't know about it. My mum and my sister knew because they tried to phone me and my phone was confiscated when I was arrested, and they found out I was in prison, like, where is she? She's been arrested. And they were like, what the hell has happened? Everything got squashed, pushed, suppressed, flattened. A few months later, another text from another girl.
Oh, babe.
And then a few months later, we all went out for my birthday and my sister's birthday. And it was couples, and one of my friends had brought a new girlfriend along. Long story short, after the night out, my ex-partner, had gone down to her room and sort of propositioned her in some way and said, would you want to go for lunch? Give me your number. And she told everyone that this is what had happened. And I was the last to know. And it was just so humiliating because I couldn't hide it anymore. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. And I couldn't make excuses for him because he'd done it so openly and to my friends. And that was when I was like, I can't keep doing this because I feel like I'm going to die. And also, I was aware enough to know how important it is to be a role model for your children, because I knew that I hadn't had a solid foundation of knowing what was a good relationship And so I wanted her to have more of a chance. And really, it was purely her and my mothering instinct that got me away from him. It was nothing to do with me.
That is the kicker. And this is what people need to understand. When we're working with clients who have gone through things like this, I'm trying to get my client to go back and reparent themselves so they understand their value. Because you were not willing to leave because you had no value.
Yeah.
But Paige had value.
Oh my God, she had so much value.
And so when I say to my clients, well, if you were your child, would you do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
This is the root of the problem, right? Thank God for Paige.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the work needed to be done within you.
Yeah.
To treat yourself the way you would treat your own child.
And this is what made it so hard. It made the next few years so hard because I wasn't equipped to be out of this relationship and dealing with him as he now was. Because as we said earlier, you're either with him or against him. And I was public enemy number one. Mm-hmm. I was the most hated, disgusting human being. And so I fought him tooth and nail with my little spoon, fighting him with my plastic spoon for years.
And what people don't understand, if they've never been in a relationship with somebody with this personality type, one of the plays in the playbook is now to go around to everyone. And you are the crazy bitch. And woe is me. Woe is me is the best part. Woe is me. I'm the victim.
Yeah.
Woe is me. I literally had one of my very, very close friends went through this same situation with her ex-husband, 3 children. And I have been through this in the past. So I knew the playbook, right? So this is fascinating. I get a text from him. Now, he's already out of the house. They're separated. They're about to get divorced. And the text says, just wanted to reach out. And now, first of all, I had no relationship with her outside of my best friend. Okay. Just wanted to reach out and just let you know, I just think you and Matt are like great. You guys are such great people. And like, this is so unfortunate, but like, I think you know me. And I think you know that like maybe some of the stuff that's being said about me really isn't true because, you know me. And so what they're doing is they're going around and they're picking, and they're trying to basically get backing.
Yeah.
And they pit everybody of value to you against you. Mm-hmm. Now, I already knew the playbook. So I'm taking screenshots of the shit and I'm sending it to my friend. And I was like, wow, play like 58 is in full force here.
Yeah.
Like he didn't understand what he was dealing with on my end. So I wasn't going to buy into the bullshit. But this is what they do. And it's fascinating. And I've heard this. I experienced it myself, but I've heard it throughout my life with other family members and friends who have been through narcissistic relationships of how calculated the split is and how these people lose the people that they thought were supportive of them because they literally put them against them. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was really hard because I really love and still love his family. His sister is a really close friend of mine. She's had issues with him herself. And she's got a heart of gold, you know, but typical that she and him would be brother and sister because it's like the sun and the moon, you know?
Yeah.
But it really tested our relationship because even when she had, you know, one conversation with him, we would have to have a conversation to understand which part was true and which part wasn't. And it would put doubt in her mind about our relationship, about things I'd said, you know, because he was trying to get in between. But luckily, we've managed to travel right through that and we are very close and we always will be. We've made it through to the other side. But that was challenging. And I hated, because I had that low self-esteem, I worried about what people thought about me. Even if it was his friends, You know, I knew that he was saying things and telling them things about me and not saying what he'd done wrong. You know, he would never say, he would always talk about Nikki hit me, but he would never say why. You know, oh, what, like the time you hit me? And I'd be like, yeah, but why? Oh, well, that's irrelevant. You shouldn't hit people. And it would be very much like heavy on the what I'd done and no admission of what his part was to play in it. And in the end, I had to kind of take a step back, and I did things like I blocked him on every social platform and his friends on the platforms that he was on. Like I had a lot of time for his friends that were my friends, and he's not on Instagram, for example. So I'm friends with them all on Instagram, but on Facebook, I blocked everyone because I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. I needed him to be away from me, from my network. I didn't want to hear stuff. It's like watching the news, you know, you put it on and all of a sudden your world gets sucked down a hole.
Yeah.
I'd rather not listen to it. And so I started to try and shift him out and away from me, but he was clinging on. And it's amazing how much I felt I needed to give him in the early days. We moved into a flat, me and Paige, because he kept the family home. He kept all her bedroom furniture, tried to buy it new. I had no money. I'd been on maternity leave for 9 months and spent all of my money because I paid half the mortgage, all of the bills from my maternity money, and I had nothing left. And so as a contractor, I didn't have a job even, you know, nothing to go back to. So I had to get a job in London. And luckily I had a friend who was a recruitment person. He knew that I was good at what I did, and he got me into a good job that was paying well. And that was that was like a divine timing thing. First and only job that I went for. And honestly, it was like the saddest thing, because I knew I had to go for this interview and my world had absolutely fallen apart. And my mum came to my house, got bags of clothes, work clothes out of the loft, ironed a jacket and a shirt for me, pretty much dressed me, took the baby and went, go and get on the train. And I was like a rabbit in headlights. Like, I did not know what life was. How is this happening? I'm still up in the night at 3, at 11. I'm feeding this giant baby who I adore. And now I've got to go to work in London 4 days a week and put her into nursery. It fucking broke my heart. And I went up to London and I was like, this is my only chance of getting away from him, because he thinks that I'm going to be stuck in this house with him. He loved that. He had all the power, he thought. And I smashed that interview. It was as if someone had said to me, I'm going to set fire to your baby if you don't get this job. No. I was like, yes, I can do that. I've done that before. I've done that really, really well. I've actually got about 50,000 examples of how brilliantly I did it before. You know, like, blah, 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 blah. I come out and I was like, I don't even know who that was. I don't know how I did that. They were completely blown away. And so I got the job, and I loved it, because I got to go back and say, a couple of weeks later, I found a place for us to live. We're moving. I've got a new job. And he looked up and he went, cool. And I thought, he's not happy, because he didn't think that it would happen. I was selling his presents that he bought me on eBay. Oh, God, I've got to tell you this story. And I'm sorry. I know this is shut me up at any point.
We're going to keep going, because you know what? We'll go for like another 5 minutes. And I think we'll end up having to do a part 2, because I think what's coming out is so important for people to hear.
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about educating, right? And I want somebody to listen to this, unfortunately, and say, shit.
Yeah.
I have to make a move.
I'm gonna we'll cut it off at the point where I've split up with him and moved out, and then we can carry on. But I've got to tell you the story because it's so funny. So it's just so you're gonna love it. So he got me right. I'm someone who's always loved animals. Like, I've got paw prints on my wrist. I had 7 rabbits, 2 gerbils, 2 hamsters, a dog, 2 cats. I love animals. And he thought it would be a good idea to buy me a real rabbit fur coat for Christmas. right? So not only this, but one of my friends said to him, "Are you sure that Nikki's going to like that? Doesn't she love animals?" And he went, and he got annoyed with her. They had an argument because it's like, "How dare you tell me?" And he said, "Oh, I bought this in a boutique. All of the girls thought that they were like, I mean, I wish you were my boyfriend and bought me stuff like that. I'd love that." And he gave it to me and I couldn't even bear to touch it. I hated it so much, but I had to pretend I liked it. He made me wear it and I actually wore it on a night and it was just awful. And that was the first thing I sold on eBay to make money to get out. Like, I was like, get rid of it. Like, I can't believe, but that he liked he liked me to always look a certain way.
Of course.
Like, look,
because
like
you're the pretty handbag.
Yeah, exactly. So he wanted to dress me a certain way and he wanted me to wear the fur coat and to have the bright red hair. And I did all of that to please him. But it's just that level of selfishness to get somebody a gift that they would just feel morally icky about. It just made me laugh.
Oh my God. Well, it is hysterical because it just shows how clueless they are.
Yeah.
Right. And how calculated everything again is transactional and a means to an end. I need to get this for her so it'll look good on my shoulder when she wears it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So I have to come back to you to figure out how we can do a part 2 of this, which will end up really being a part 3 because we'll have to split this into 2. We'll have to split this one in half. But what I want to come back to in part 3 is then what? I mean, page is 6 now. You went from banking to becoming a coach, and I think it's important for people to understand that those who suffer heal, and I want people to hear about the healing and I want people to hear about what that looked like and what you learned. I call it, I don't call it this. I got this from Oprah because she's brilliant. Post-traumatic wisdom, and
I love that.
It's so brilliant.
I love that. And we've got to talk about the stroke and the heart surgery.
Yes, guys, she had a stroke and heart surgery subsequently.
Yeah.
Because now the emotional pain's gone. We got to go back to the physical.
Exactly that.
Right.
Exactly
so
that.
That's going to be part 3. You and I'll sit offline and come up with the next one. But I really want to thank people who have taken the time to listen to this initial one. And it really, honestly, what I can say is if you find yourself connecting with the story, one of us is a safe place to land.
Yeah, 100%.
Whoever you feel is comfortable, there's a safe place to land. And if you haven't shared your story and you're scared, it's a safe place to land.
Yeah.
And narcissistic abuse is real. It's been highlighted in the news significantly as of late because of this very, very public trial with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. And I think more awareness and attention needs to be brought to it. So I'm really, really, really grateful that you set all this time aside for me today, Nikki. And for those of you who are watching, if you have questions, comment here, or again, direct message one of us. And we would be very, very happy to answer your questions. Until next time, this is Your Meaningful Life, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye.